Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Curtis, and today I'm going to talk about BMF Season 4, Episode 2. The episode starts off with Loco, Terry, and Meech back in Mexico. It appears that Loco was able to kill a deer, and at this time he's removing the deer's organs and intestines, and Terry, he's looking disgusted. I was looking disgusted as well. He tells them that they would need to take the organs to the wolves who are nearby so that they can escape. Terry does not want to do it, and then Loco, this part confused me, he just decided to run up and pull a knife out on him. Meech is able to calm the situation down. Loco, he backs down. And then, the two of them, as far as with Meech and Terry, they have a small back and forth. But Terry eventually goes into the woods with the deer meat. Meech turns around, and this part confused me because Loco just disappeared. I wasn't really sure what was happening there. And then Meech, he walks towards, there's a fire, like a little campfire. He leans down and he just stares at the fire. In the next scene, we see that everyone is talking about Lamar and how he attempted to kill Meech and Terry. One of Terry's people, named Estero, comes to the restaurant, and the two of them have a brief conversation about what happened the previous night. And Terry tells him that Hoop is actually looking for B. Mickey, and then Estero tells him that they need to pretty much let him back into the fold. He needs to forgive him, and that he actually owes him for saving his life. And it's at this time that Estero actually inquires about Meech, where did he go? And Terry tells him that he hasn't spoken to me since he went to Atlanta. Sarah tells him that he should not react to anything until Meech gets back from Atlanta, and also tells him that he needs to remember that he is a boss, and that as a boss he needs to worry about business opposed to worrying about beef, which I actually agree. And it's at this point that Terry reveals to Sarah that he has a potential distributor in South Carolina. After this, we actually go to Atlanta and we see Meech and Duffy, and they're talking about his plans. He asks Duffy if the team is ready for the next shipment, and Duffy, of course, says yes. And after this, Meech inquires about Trentwood, which is the housing project in the city, because he heard that the city is actually planning to tear it down. Duffy tells him that yes, the city is planning to tear it down, but it is going to be a while because, of course, they have to relocate people first. And it's at this time that Duffy reveals that his father, unfortunately, is not doing well health-wise. And Meech tells him that, that is even more reason for everyone to just live their life to the fullest, because, of course, you never know what's going to happen to you. After this, we see Mickey's child's mother. She's in the house. She's talking to her daughter. And then Mickey comes in and she tells him, that the hospital bills are piling up. And she also tells him that the daughter will need another surgery soon. And it's getting ready to get intense. Looks like they're getting ready to get into an argument, but the daughter cries. And so she retreats. And then Mickey just looks in despair because he doesn't really know what to do. His daughter is sick. She needs surgery, but of course he doesn't have the money. So he has a lot going on. In the next scene, we see Mark and Abe. Mark is dropping Abe off at home, which just so happens to be in the Trentwood projects. And Abe is reminiscing about his son Milton. And Mark asks him if the police have any leads on who did it. And he tells him that, no one is willing to come forward and talk, which, Mark is not really surprised by that. And it's at this point that Abe attempts to get information out of Mark as far as what's bothering him and why did he, decided to join the class. But Mark, he's not really trying to speak right now. And Abe recognizes this and he's just like, you know what? I know you don't want to talk right now, but when you are ready, just let me know. I'll be here for you. After this, Mark, he is getting ready to pull off when he notices a group of guys talking nearby. He gets out of his car and he asks them if they have a lighter. Next thing you know, we see a bunch of cars speeding through the complex, and I was so confused. And then all of a sudden, cops, they jumped out and started beating people up, including Mark, and I was just like, what? Next, we see Lucille. She's singing at the church. Charles is in the audience. And after service is over, Charles, he gets up. It looks like he's getting ready to leave, but he's stopped by Brian, a.k.a. B. Mickey. And Brian tells Charles that, he is working the graveyard shift at the plant. And he's basically saying that he's not able to get enough hours in order to afford health insurance. And so he's kind of going on this tangent about, kind of like a woe is me and I'm down. And Charles pretty much tells him without telling him, you just need to get another job like he did. He said he used to work 3 jobs, so he basically needs to find something else to do and be a man. And then Lucille comes over and she pretty much inquires, about the family, what's going on. And he lets her know that she's not doing well as far as his child. She's sick, she needs surgery. And he feels like God is punishing her for the things that he did back in the day. And then he asks her, do you think the church will be willing to pay for his daughter's surgery or like chip in? And she tells him that she will see what she can do. After this, we see Markeisha and Terry in Terry's apartment. She gives him more information about Isaac and tells him that she wants to go to the meeting. He tells her that she cannot go to the meeting because, in his opinion, she is not ready. And she tells him, you know what, if I can't go to the meeting, I would at least like a percentage. And he laughs, he smiles at her, and he's like, okay, I'll make sure to give you a percentage. At the Atlanta police station, the officers who attacked Mark are questioning him, and we find out that his name is not Mark, it's actually Vaughn, and that he is an undercover cop from Detroit. And he tells them that he is trying to get information on BMF, specifically Meech. And the officers, not really both, but there is one officer, his name is King. He's not really feeling it. He feels like he's trying to step on his toes, like you are an officer or a detective from another state trying to come down here and tell us what to do. He wasn't feeling it, so he basically says he needs to stay out of the way, mind his own business, and then they allow him to leave. Next, we see Nicole and her boyfriend in her new car, and they're talking about college and also talk about Lamar. Her boyfriend pretty much asks, do you think your brother's had any involvement in that? She says she doesn't know, nor does she care. And they continue to talk, but they are interrupted because a police officer knocks on the car and tells them that they need to get out of the car. Back in Atlanta, Meech and his people, they're at the strip club, and we hear Purdy's new single, which is received well from the group. And after this, we see Charles at home, and we hear the phone ring, and it's a person named Chuck. Chuck tells him that the tour has been canceled because his brother has to get surgery. Charles hangs up, and Lucille, who was listening in the background, she appears, it almost like she appears out of nowhere, and she asks him about child support, like how are you going to pay child support? How are you going to get us out of the red? And he tells her that he doesn't really feel like he needs to pay child support because their youngest is about to go to college. So there really isn't anyone to support. And it looks like it's getting ready to get heated, but then the phone rings again, and it's actually Nicole. And she tells him that she got arrested. Nicole is being questioned by a detective about the car. It appears that the car was stolen, and I was just like, man, that's terrible. Like, Meech, you gave your younger sister a stolen car, but I guess you can't really expect much from Meech. And the detective asks her, who gave you the car? Like, give me a name. Which brother gave you the car? And she tells him that the car was given to her by her brother, Michael Smith, who is a bastard of the family. And then she lies and says that her mom was out there on the streets. She was just doing it with anybody. And so she ended up having another son named Michael. So she's trying to be funny, but the detective said, I can be funnier, and lock her up. I said, damn. Lucille calls Meech and lets him know that the vehicle that he gave to Nicole was stolen and that she was arrested, and that basically is his fault. Meech and his people talk about it, and we find out that the car was actually given to them from a broker in Atlanta, and that everything is supposed to come back clean. And so Meech, of course, he's pissed that his little sister is in jail, and so he plans to confront the broker. Back at the house, Charles comes in and tells her that, he tried to go to the pawn shop, but unfortunately they're all closed. And so I know I just want to point this out. It is very dark in this house. I'm like, can somebody please turn on the light? But at this point, she tells him that she plans to ask Terry for the money to bail her out. Charles is concerned about this because he knows that Terry's money is not legit. And Lucille takes the time to basically shit on Charles and blame him for everything that happened and basically says he wasn't there, he didn't do his job. And, she then tells him that what he needs to do to make something happen is he needs to go to the plant. He needs to get down on his knees and beg for a job back. And I know you don't want to do it, but it looks like that's the only option at this point. After this, we see Vaughn smoking a cigarette. He gets a call from the detective that was questioning Nicole. And the detective tells him that, Nicole was arrested for driving a stolen car and that the car was actually registered to a dealership in Atlanta. And he wants him to go to the dealership to question him about the vehicle. After this, we see Charles. He's at the pawn shop attempting to pawn an instrument. The owner tells him that he normally only does things on consignment, but he'll be willing to buy this out since, his daughter is in jail and he needs to get her out. But he tells him that it will be for 30% less than what he expected. Charles attempts to negotiate, but the owner is not having it. He's like, this is my final offer. Next, we meet Isaac. Isaac and Terry are meeting to discuss business plans. Isaac is able to persuade Terry to trust him and to work with him. And Terry tells him that he would need to work directly with Markeisha since he wasn't one who made the deal happen. Isaac, he's happy about this because he's attracted to her. And Terry, he gets a little upset and he tells him, look, the situation between you and Markeisha needs to stay business only. Don't even try anything. And Isaac, he's in agreement. And then at this point, Hoop comes in and tells them that they need to talk about Mickey. Meech and Duffy arrive at the dealership and they attempt to confront the broker, but have to leave once they see Vaughn. Meech and Duffy tell her to distract Vaughn and also tell her that she better not say anything about them. The two of them rush out and the broker goes to greet Vaughn. Vaughn tries to get information from the broker, but of course, she's not having it. This isn't her first rodeo. And she tells him that he needs to get a warrant if he wants to search anything in there or search any records. Back at the house, Lucille's going off on Nicole because it turns out that she was actually having sex with her boyfriend in the car when she got caught by the police. And Nicole attempts to bring up the fact that she should be mad at Meech for giving her a stolen car, but Lucille's not trying to hear that. She's more focused on the sex part. And then Lucille, she attempts to go off again, but she's stopped in her tracks when Nicole actually starts going off on her. Nicole tells her that she has been acting high and mighty ever since she got those church robes. And I said, uh-oh. And then she says, you have the nerve to talk because when you were my age, you were on what, baby number one, baby number two. And Lucille, she couldn't take it. She tried to snatch her up and I was like, get her. But, Charles actually grabbed her. She wasn't able to get her. And side note, I think this is very important to note, even though it has nothing to do with anything. Charles and Lucille are toxic. Those two are toxic. And to be honest, they're actually made for each other. After this, we see Vaughn, who's looking at a map of Georgia and photos in which one of them appears to be Mickey, when he hears someone knocking on the door. And it turns out it's actually one of the officers, the black one that attacked him. And the officer tells him that a confidential informant told him that BMF moves waste through planes at the Fulton County Airport. And he goes on to say that there's a plane coming in from Colombia and he believes that they may contain drugs that BMF is going to use to sell on the streets. And he also tells Vaughn that he wants to work directly with him. There are two quick scenes after this, one in which we see Terry telling Markeisha about the meeting with Isaac and that, he told Isaac that he needs to work directly with her. And she's excited about this. Her plan is coming into fruition. And then in the next scene, we see Charles putting on his uniform, so it looks like he actually got his job back at the plant, so good for him. After this, we see Vaughn, the officers who attacked him, and they're inside of a car and they're waiting at the airport. Vaughn tells them that they should probably wait until Misha arrives just to make sure that this is the correct plane. But one of the officers, Kang, is determined to get it done. He's super arrogant, and to be honest, I think it's one of those things where, like I said earlier, he's from a different city, a different state, so he's kind of trying to show him, like, I can do this, let me show you how it's done type of thing. And so he's like, you know what, we're going to do everything now. And so they decide to go forward, and then they speed off, some other cars speed off, and they end up meeting up with the people who were on the plane, and they pull out guns. And then, unfortunately, one of the guys who was in the plane actually reaches into his pocket, and this causes the officers to actually shoot at him. But it turns out that there were actually officers there already, and so they started shooting back. And they end up killing the guys who were on the plane, but they also end up killing Kang, the officer. And so, of course, Vaughn is shocked. He's confused. He's like, what is going on? So he steps outside. And once he does that, we see that Meech and Duffy were actually looking on from the distance. And they're pretty much laughing at it because they already knew what was going to happen because they're very familiar with Vaughn, it appears. And Duffy asks him, well, if that's not the right shipment, where did locals send the real shipment? And Meech just smiles. Terry and Mickey meet, and Mickey tells him that he wants to get back in the game, not for himself, but for his daughter. And it's at this time that Terry attempts to give Mickey a stack of money for his daughter's surgery. Me personally, I would have took it, but he actually refuses, and he tells him that he wants to earn his keep. Terry gets up and just walks away. Meech goes back to the strip club and he introduces himself to Purdy, who doesn't seem to be in good spirits, nor does she seem to be comfortable. She appears to be afraid of who I believe to be her manager, Trail, who is basically dictating her life at this point and is also refusing to give her the good liquor. Meech pours some of his liquor into her cup. She is a little nervous at first because she feels like she's going to make him upset, but Meech doesn't care. He's like, he's not going to do anything to me. And she actually drinks the liquor. And after this, Meech, he turns around and he notices that a woman is dancing on the pole, and he is mesmerized. And to be honest, I was a little mesmerized as well. And then they go to the back and she tries to give him some candy. So she called it candy. He tells her that he does not put anything up her nose. And she tells him that this is not that. This is actually Blue Dolphin. And this is something that will help him stay hard all night. And he's just pretty much saying, like, I do not need it. But as time goes on, he allows her to convince him to take it. And then he goes into somewhat of a daze. In the end, we see that Loco actually set the shipment to Pusha in St. Louis, and it appears that Pusha is plotting to sell the product himself. So this is going to be quite interesting. I want to see how this plays out. And that's the end of the episode. I really appreciate everybody watching. If you could, please like, comment, share, subscribe. I will really appreciate it. You all have a great rest of your day. Bye.